Time to catch up with what's going on in the Luther College wrestling program. Having a conversation here with Dave Mitchell. And Coach, the world's a crazy place right now, as you very well know. Trying to get a wrestling team ready for a season in the course of a pandemic. How are you guys holding up as a team? What are some of the things you've been able to do? What have been some of the things you've been restricted about as you try to get ready for what hopefully will be the 2021 wrestling season?
Yeah, and thanks for this opportunity to talk a little bit about it, because we're very excited about it. You know, when everything put the brakes on last spring and you're trying to get through the summer, and we're recruiting in ways that we haven't recruited before with a lot of these Zoom calls, and trying to put a team together from an incoming class standpoint, and then try to keep your current guys focused and training. And as I knew going into that phase last spring and summer, is that some guys would handle that very well and really make grounds on other people, and others would struggle with being on their own and not having the structure around them. And I think we'll continue to see that, Darren, as you get into the college wrestling season now. Some people excel in that environment and really can make up ground on others that maybe might struggle in that kind of environment. And that's just the world as it is, right? I mean, there's some inequities that way. And for us and a lot of our guys in our program where we need to develop guys, Darren, we saw it as a great opportunity to really try to make some strides if we could during that period. And we have a good group of core guys, of our best guys, that I think did an outstanding job all the way last spring, summer. And then coming into the fall, we were able to get together on September 20th, bring everybody back to campus, tested everybody, and then start training. And what a joy that was, just to have everybody back together. The guys were excited to be in the group together. We did bring in a nice freshman class. So we've got a team of 42 guys, and we started our training outdoors. So we were in pods of about 12 guys, and we were doing a lot of outdoor training. And it was good. I mean, Decorah is a beautiful place to train in the fall anyway, outdoors. And we've had a wonderful fall anyway. So we really got going outdoors in the fall, and it went extremely well. Then we started to move indoors in kind of the middle of October or early October, and got on the mat and really started to do some good things there. And we went 6 weeks where we were wrestling consistently, lifting all the time, and had zero COVID cases in that 6-week period, which was outstanding. And then, as we know, with the virus the way it is, then sometimes there'll be an outbreak, right? You'll have a group that has it. And so we've been on the mat and going very hard now. And but the last go around when we came back from Thanksgiving, as you might expect, there was a few cases that came out. And so now we're going through the protocols that are necessary to get guys healthy. And the guys that are healthy, we're continuing to go and train at a high level. And we knew that. We knew that all along, that there's going to be times like that. And so, and I'm sure you've heard this from every coach you've interviewed this year, Darren, and that when you can go, you got to go, right? When you're healthy and you can go, you have to go. And you have to train at a high level, because you don't know when the knock's going to come and say, hey, you need to isolate for 10 days or you got to quarantine for 14 days. And so we've really embraced that. And I think our team has embraced that at a high level. And we've had a really, really good training session getting ready to roll here now.
Wrestling and sports in general are about discipline and about structure. The only thing certain in today's world is uncertainty. How have you been able to adjust your coaching to that? Because it's a change for everybody involved.
It has. And I think it's just like our student athletes are going through new experiences. I think us as coaches are going through new experiences, and we're trying to learn what the best way to handle certain situations are as they occur, right? So let's say somebody has to quarantine for 14 days. Is it best to do it on campus or back home, right? Those are things that we're learning and trying to make decisions, and we're trying to take information into play about what their home setting's like, what it would be like on campus. So those things we're trying to evolve with. From a team training standpoint, even though someone's quarantining, doesn't mean they can't be still growing, right? And so as a coach, one of the focuses I've really tried to emphasize here throughout this is this idea of mental reps, right? And trying to get mental reps with specific techniques that we might be showing. So with the guys we have in the room, we're Zooming our other guys that can't be in the room into the room with us, so they can be watching practice, specifically watching the technique illustration that we're talking about. And then we're asking those guys to be able to get mental reps on that. And you wouldn't believe this, Darren, but I'm even trying some of those mental reps. Sometimes I just, in the morning, as I'm getting ready, I'm trying to think about the details of what breaks that technique down that would make it helpful from a mental rep standpoint, but also from an execution standpoint when you are on the mat. And those are not, disconnected, right? There's an overlap between those things. And we know very well now that mental reps carry over into real reps at some point in all sports. And I think wrestling is that way too, although we probably haven't used it at wrestling at a high level across the board, across the country in general. So we're trying to emphasize that, trying to be real detailed and the keys of the technique to try to get guys to get that in there as we can. And then as we talked about, when the guys are in the room, we're just trying to celebrate it and really try to have great practices while we're there. Back to one of your previous questions, Darren, that I guess I didn't quite answer was, what restrictions have you had, right, in the practice room? Well, at Luther, where we have a mask mandate on campus. So everybody is wearing masks outdoors, indoors, on campus, and it's been great. And our kids are phenomenal. They have been very, they've bought into that. They want to wrestle. They want to do whatever it takes to wrestle. They want to keep the campus community healthy. So they've been doing an outstanding job at that. So when we're out training outdoors, the guys had masks on. We went for runs, they had masks on. We did stadium stairs, they had masks on. We come in the wrestling room, and when I got into the season early on, I thought, how is this going to work? It doesn't even seem possible that you could wear a mask while you're wrestling. So I thought maybe a guy could do some bottom work and maybe a little bit of light drilling. But I found out you can do a lot. You can do a lot of stuff with those masks on. Now, there's certain times I think the medical officials would say that you should have them off under certain circumstances. But I've been impressed by how our guys have embraced that and have been able to keep those on and train with those on. And kind of I approached it this way early on, Darren. One day we were doing stadium stairs, and some guys are trying to pull it down or they're pulling it below their nose. And I just thought about it. And I just thought, guys, this is just another opportunity to develop mental toughness. It's just another thing. There's always obstacles to being great. It doesn't matter, what it is. There's always going to be obstacles. This is just another one. And it's like on a silver platter served to you that you can either develop mental toughness by just leaving that thing up all the time. I'm not touching that thing. I'm just going to get done what needs to get done. I'm that tough. I can do it. Or you can just keep trying to pull it down and find a little shortcut here or there. And it's such an easy illustration of just working on your mental toughness and battling through that. And I think our guys have done an outstanding job.
Just piggybacking on that point, would it be something that you would say that just the mere fact that you're together as a team, the mere fact that you're hoping to have competition here in a month, is that enough motivation just to make sure that guys are doing things in as healthy and as safe of a way as possible so they can have a season?
No doubt about it. They want to compete. They want to train. They value getting better. They understand. They can see how we've improved already from the time we've been back. They want to be on Luther's campus. I mean, who doesn't? It's a beautiful place. So yeah, they are all in and doing what they can to ensure that happens. And as we get closer and closer to January 23rd now, which will be our first competition in the American Rivers Conference, they can feel it, we can feel it, that it's going to happen. And so they're even more diligent about doing the right things in preparation for that. So yeah, they're kids are resilient in general, Darren, and we're all seeing that right throughout this. It's been tough on a lot of people, but they're doing a great job. Overall, they're doing a great job, and we're definitely excited about being together. We're celebrating the team. We're celebrating the training opportunities. And Darren, we haven't talked about this yet, but as you know, the NCAA has decided to give everybody another year of eligibility, right, based on this year's conditions. And so for us as a program, we couldn't ask for something better, right? And like I talked about, we're a developmental program. We develop guys. That's a key component of who we are. And to think we could have a guy for 5 years instead of 4 years, especially these better guys that are in the thick of it. How many fourth-year guys have we had, Darren, that have been right there in the mix to be an All-American or been right there in the mix to win it as a fourth-year guy? And now we get a fifth year with those guys, and we've got a lot of those kinds of guys on our team right now. It's a blessing. I mean, it is phenomenal for our program specifically. So we're trying to make the most of it.
And how much of a conversation do you have maybe long-term with a few of those guys about not only this year, but the future, and how much of a focus is it just day to day when you're looking at getting ready for a season right now?
Yeah, that's good questions. So we have two guys that had injuries that already are in their fifth year this year. They had a medical hardship throughout. So they're in their fifth year. And for those guys, I feel bad about, because it's probably not realistic that they want to come back a sixth year, right? They'd held off just their senior paper to be able to finish that up here early in this next year, 2021. So I feel bad for those two guys because of that, because they're probably not going to come back. So for those guys, you want to compete this year. You want to compete as much as you can, and you want to give them a chance to compete for All-American honors. And that's exactly what we're focused on. For a guy that's a junior, let's say, you have those conversations now because they're right there. Some of those juniors are right there that we expected now that might have been Scholar All-Americans last year or regional place winners as a sophomore. And now they're making that big jump as guys often do in our program as a junior. And now you think about having one more year after that. They're further along in their academic career. So you think about ways that they could manage their coursework where it wouldn't be too expensive to come back for that 5th year, but still be able to compete. So we're having those conversations. For the early guys, the young guys, and we have, like I said, a nice freshman class, I don't think you have those conversations in the same way. You say, hey, let's get as good as we can this year. And it's like a redshirt year. You know, if you went into a Division I program, many of those guys redshirt in their first year. Well, you get this redshirt opportunity, but you can't just go through the motions and expect you're going to get better. It's got to be all in that redshirt opportunity to try to improve. And then you kind of leave what may later on down the road. You have those conversations, I think, later on. Or at least that's how we've approached it so far. And it feels right. Get as good as we can right now. For the guys that are a little bit older, start talking details about what that 5th year might look like. For the guys that are younger, focusing on improvement.
And when you look at your team right now, as you get ready for the season in January, you mentioned Thanksgiving, 42 guys from 19 different states go and see their family. They come back and your numbers went up a little bit. What type of things can you do, if anything, to maybe control things once guys go home for Christmas and then come back, because that risk is there, but at the same time, you got to have that family time as well. How do you balance that all moving forward?
Yep. Great points. And what we're going to do is treat Christmas a little differently than we did Thanksgiving. So oftentimes, especially with guys from a distance, your plans for training occurred back in September, October, when you thought you kind of knew a schedule that might occur. And we kind of thought, well, you know, we'll give them Thanksgiving off, and then we'll try to shorten that Christmas break and try to keep guys a little bit closer because we're going to be competing in January. And then as you got further into the fall, you know, because of the way situations are, the college isn't going to be open for some of those days during the Christmas break. And so some guys can stay around, but in general, we're not going to keep everybody around like we thought we would. So now we kind of had 2 breaks built in there. You're not going to change the Thanksgiving break late in the game when guys have plane tickets purchased and that kind of thing. And really, there's not that big of a concern in terms of if guys are out a little bit because of quarantining now, we're not competing right away. It's not as big of a concern. But when we come back from Christmas, it is go time, and it is important that we're really, really careful. So there's a couple of things I think, Darren, that have to happen. One is we got to be very cautious during this Christmas period. Guys have to be careful about what they're doing. Number 2 is just like when we came back from Thanksgiving, we'll be doing this in January. We're going to test our entire team right away. So on Tuesday when we get back, actually, I'm sorry, it's Saturday, January 1st, we'll test our entire team. And then what we're really going to be careful with this time around, Darren, versus Thanksgiving, is we tested at Thanksgiving, but then we went on to practice, right, for a few days. On this go around, we're going to be really cautious. The guys that have already had COVID, of course, they don't have to test, and they've got a 90-day immunity period there, I guess. And so they'll be able to do some practicing. The guys that haven't had COVID, once they test, we're going to be really cautious with those guys and sit them out until we get that test result back. And then once we're on campus and we know we have, any positives that occur, those guys will be off to the side and everybody else should be able to get going. And then just be very careful when we're on campus. So that's our plan.
When you look at college wrestling as a whole, is depth going to be more important this year, knowing the fact that the possibility does exist, and I'd be shocked if it doesn't happen, that you might have to have a starter out for a couple of weeks?
Yeah. Well, just need to look at the NFL and see no quarterbacks on the team for the Denver Broncos on one Sunday, right? To realize that coaches are going to have to be creative and cautious on how you structure your practice groups, how you structure your practices in general, and so that you don't find yourself losing everybody at a given weight class, either due to the COVID or contact tracing that occurs with COVID. So depth is going to be important, and it isn't just the depth. I think it's also going to be the creativity of how you structure things to keep guys apart enough so that they don't, both of those groups get knocked out by contact tracing or from COVID itself. So I think I think there's be some good creativity by coaches to try to make that happen. We're very fortunate at Luther, and we're very thankful that, we're testing every week when we come back in January. And so we'll know where we're at with our team, our coaching staff, our training staff, our managers, our wrestlers. Everybody's testing every week, and we're very thankful to Luther and Hy-Vee that's helping us with that. So we'll know where we're at. It's our job as coaches, I think, and our student athletes' job to manage their interactions outside of that, right? Where are we at in our residence halls? Where are we at the cafeteria? What are our training groups look like? Those kinds of things.
And when you have 42 guys, talking about the structure of practice, 42 guys in the beautiful Solberg Wrestling Complex, you can't social distance with 42 guys. The structure of practice, how do you make sure that that prolonged contact with whoever you're partnered up with is as limited as possible?
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of what we're going to try to figure out in January. So far, we've been putting guys into groups of 3 or 4, and you're only wrestling with 2 or 3 other guys. And it's interesting that through wrestling so far, we have not been able to trace back any of the spread of COVID through the wrestling room, meaning that we had 2 guys in 2 different groups of 3 that had COVID. Neither one of their 2 partners got COVID. And we wrestled hard for 4 days, and they were wrestling all the time. So that's encouraging, right? That's encouraging to see that, and we hope we can continue that. But you're right. So right now, what we've been doing, Darren, is we've been doing individual practices on Tuesday and Thursday, where you come in with a single partner or 2 partners, and the coaches are running you through a workout where we've got lots of space, and maybe you can have multiple groups going that are socially distanced while that's occurring. And then on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we've been together, but we're not having everybody wrestling at the same time. Some guys are sitting out while the other guys are wrestling, etc. But it's still going to come down to managing it and coaches managing it. And I envision that maybe when we get to January, now you're trying to split practices, entirely, where you have different groups at different times. And I know some programs are doing that now. As you know, at Luther, it's a family atmosphere and it's a team atmosphere, and so we want to still maintain that, but also be smart as we get close to competing. Real quickly too, in those small groups, Darren, then I don't think you want to have all of your 197 pounders in the same small group wrestling each other, right? That's where that creativity is going to come about. Your top backup better be in a different group, right? And so those are the things that I think we're all working on.
And you look at wrestling in whole, cleaning and sanitization has been a big part of the sport for many, many years, being the fact it's such a close contact sport, and you're going to roll around on mats quite a bit. That being said, do you think wrestling is basically a little bit more prepared to deal with something like COVID than perhaps other sports are?
I think so. We're used to this, right? We're used to skin checks. We're used to sanitizing mats, sanitizing gear, washing gear all the time. We're used to that. That's second nature to us. And so I think I see some of my other colleagues in the department that aren't used to those kinds of things, and it's been an adjustment period for them. And I'll bet some other sports will maintain some of those things that we've been doing for a long time in our sport in terms of monitoring wellness and that type of thing. So I do think we're ahead of the game. And, and I'm sure you've heard this too, Darren, that people say, well, geez, wrestling has got to be the worst sport for contraction of COVID. I mean, you're just so close to each other all the time. And in some senses, you would think that would be true. But I'm telling you, I don't know. I'm not positive it is. Just because, especially, like I said, our guys are wearing masks a lot of the time, and we're getting some data here that suggests it's not being contracted while they're wrestling together for long periods of time. And if you think about a match setting, right? In a match setting, there's a lot of breaks in a match where you do make separation. And does a match last 15? It's a 7-minute match, but does it last 15 minutes? Yeah, maybe. Maybe we'd have to look at the averages. I bet it doesn't average 15 minutes. A match doesn't average that. And if there's a lot of separation in that period of time, are you really truly in close contact for 15 minutes or more with an individual if somebody happens to have it? And I'm not sure you would be. So I think wrestling is ahead of the game in many ways. And I know there's some initial studies coming out by the National Wrestling Coaches Association and by USA Wrestling, where they've been tracking some of these larger events that have occurred here this late summer and fall. And they're not seeing a lot of cases being traced back to those events either, which doesn't surprise me as I've thought through it some. So yeah, I think we're ahead of the game in some ways, and we still need to be cautious.
Final question for you. What's your overall message to the Luther wrestling family, to Norse Nation right now, as hopefully about a month from now you'll be on the mat and competing?
Number one, thank you. As you may know, we had a one-team drive this fall where we generated money for Luther Wrestling in one day, and it was just a huge success. We generated over $30,000 in just over a day for Luther College Wrestling, and a lot of first-time givers, people that came out of the woodwork to support our program. And that's what I see every day as the head of this program. People love Luther Wrestling. They're supportive of Luther College Wrestling, whether we're on the mat competing or we're not. We have great support in the community and in the Luther College community. So first off is thank you. Secondly is we have a nice team. We have a nice young team. And I think people are going to be excited with the way we can compete. This is going to be an interesting year, and we'll see how that all shakes out. But we had a nice team coming back from last year, a top 20 nationally ranked team last year. We have a nice recruiting class. The kids that are returning, I think, have made jumps. They've made strides. And so we're excited about this team and the direction we're headed. Now, as you well know, our regional, our conference is awfully tough too. So you may not see the same jump, in some ways that you'd like to see in terms of dual meets or regional finishes, but we'll see. We're another year under our belt, and another year of progressing makes me very excited for what we can do this year, and even more excited about what we can do, the year after that, after we get a year of training. So just want to say thanks to everybody out there for all your support, and I think you'll be excited about what you see on the mat this season.
All right, Mitch, great catching up with you and chatting with you about some Luther wrestling. Hopefully, I wish we were heading to Nashville this weekend. That would have been the weekend to have some fun and face some great competition down at the Gator Boots Duels. But hopefully in another month you can be on the mat and doing some great things in the American Rivers Conference. Best of luck to you. Merry Christmas to you, your family, and to the entire Luther wrestling family.
Thanks, Darren. It's great seeing you again, and thanks for all you do for the sport of wrestling and all athletics. Appreciate it.
Dave Mitchell chatting Luther College Wrestling.